Alright, what's up, Moose? Back again for another video for you guys. I think the videos have been going pretty well, so I hope you guys find some value in them. This week, what we're going to be focusing on is the vertical stack, and specifically, how I have and your captains have drawn up how we want to run the vertical stack. So first off, we're just going to go over some basic ultimate terminology, different offenses, what a vert is, and then we're going to get into some complex concepts, some certain plays that we can run, that kind of thing, certain things that you're going to encounter when running a vert stack. So there's three main offenses in Ultimate. You have your vertical stack, that's probably the most common that we're going to go over, and that's what you see on your screen here. You have your 5 cutters, 5 defenders, downfield in a vertical line, and then you have your handler with the disc and your dump. And then the other two offenses are a hoe stack or a horizontal stack, which we will go over a little bit later in the semester, but that just involves bringing back one other person to handle, so you have 3 handlers back, and then 4 people lined up, spread out horizontally across the field. The other one is a side stack, and that is essentially the same thing as a vert, but you're lining up on the side of the field. So for the sake of simplicity, we're just going to be running the vertical stack in the center of the field the whole time, and I'll kind of explain why that is. So the basic flow of the vert is cuts from the back of the stack. So the furthest person back, the 5th person in the stack, they have the option to either cut in or out. And so that's basically right before the disc is tapped in or right when the disc is tapped in, they'll either make their cut in or out. And depending on what they do is a large part of what the next person's option is. If the first person that catches the disc is a really strong thrower, they cut in, they catch the disc, they get the disc. If you're the next person in line, you might want to continue that by going deep because that person has that throw. So a lot of it is really just determining, and recognizing who has the disc, where the disc is on the field, and a lot of like the timing and where you're supposed to cut is dependent upon that. So yeah, the very first option for handlers is, at the very most basic level, is just a handler from the back of the stack cutting in to the open side, right? The side where the mark is forcing them to throw and trying to throw up the field and hit that first in cut. Now, if that person who made that in cut doesn't catch the disc, what they do is they sprint straight across the field to the front of the stack and clear. And clearing just means you're getting out of the main lane, the open side lane, where your options are. And the big thing of when you're clearing is you're still an option, because that handler can still throw a break throw to you, whether that's an inside flick if the force is flick, or an around backhand if the force is flick, or an inside backhand if the force is backhand, or a round flick if the force is backhand. And so you really want to make sure that you're maintaining eye contact with the person with the disc as you're clearing throughout your whole cut. So obviously you're making your cut in, you're staring at them, right? You're waiting for that pump fake or when you get too close, and then you're clearing really hard to the front of the stack, making sure that you are maintaining eye contact the whole time. And just really quick, so indicated on your screen here, so the top of the stack, also known as the front of the stack, is the first person in the stack, the very first person. That's the person that raises their hand, says stack on me, stack on me. That's the front, that's the top. And then the back of the stack is the person most deep downfield, the people furthest away from the handlers, the people who are going to be making the cuts. So another option for the handlers, if they don't necessarily want to throw the in cut right away, potentially they could be stuck on the sideline, or the person who is defending the front of the stack, the person setting the stack, maybe they're not paying attention. And if you see me play, I like to do this a lot, and basically I'll just throw an inside throw over to the break side to the person in the front of the stack. This is hugely advantageous for the offense because you still gain a good amount of yards when doing this, but you also get to work it more towards the break side, so you're breaking the defense. You're doing exactly what they're trying to prevent you from doing, which is good. And so let's say that the handler who has the disc throws that break throw to the person in the front of the stack, which is, their second option, behind the person cutting in the back of the stack. They throw that throw, the person in the front of the stack catches it. Now the next option is from the back of the stack. So once that person in the front of the stack catches it, it's up to the person who is in the back of the stack. Now that could be a different person that first cut in initially. It's whoever's furthest back at that time. You need to realize that that throw happened and cut over to the break side. So that is what we like to call a continuation cut. So this first break throw that happens to the front of the stack, they catch it. They're quickly turning, looking over the break side, and able to throw that continuation throw coming from the back of the stack over to that break side, gaining yards. This is like a popular throw, a popular option, one of our best options, because as you can see where the defender is positioned in the stack, they're going to be out of position to being able to maintain the force as, let's say it's a flick or away for this case. They're going to be out of position to try and prevent you from breaking the mark to throwing that backhand. So again, the person with the disc, who is the handler, throws that inside break or that around break to the person in the front of the stack. The person in the front of the stack will catch that and quickly look to the break side, which hopefully someone in the back of the stack will be paying attention, recognize that, and hit that continuation for an easy gain of yards. Now, as the stall count continues to rise, maybe the handler looks for that first initial in cut. Stall 2, stall 3 is counting. They look for that inside break or around backhand to the person in the front of the stack. Stall 3, stall 4, stall 5 hits. They don't really have an option that they like. So then their third option is to the dump. And we're going to go over handler cuts next week. So I'm not going to touch so much on the options that the handler or the dump has, but just for the sake of learning the vert, the third option that the handler is looking at is just to get it to the handler, the dump, to reset the stall count. And so we know that one of the options for the dump is a upline cut. And so when that is happening late in the stall count, it's really important that the people in the stack stop cutting. Okay, because you don't want to cause a collision where someone in the back of the stack is cutting in and the person's cutting upline, and then you have 4 people, 2 people on offense, 2 people on defense, all in one space. So if the person who is the dump is making that upline cut, it's really important because they can't really see what's happening upfield. So you need to make sure that if you are in the back of the stack cutting in, just stop your cut and get out of the space of the handler, because they're the ones who they can't really see behind them, and that's what the handler is looking for. That's their third option there. Otherwise, what could happen is the handler with the disc could throw an around throw to the person who is the dump. And when this happens, it's very similar to if the handler throws to the front of the stack, because what we want is, if that around throw happens, the person with the dump catches it and is turning over to the break side. We want it to be the front of the stack, not the back of the stack, cutting across the field to the break side and catching the disc. Okay, so very similar to if the handler with the disc throws an inside break to the front of the stack, where we have a continuation cut coming to the break side. The only difference here is that continuation cut, right, the first throw is going to the dump, and that continuation cut is coming over from the front of the stack. It's the front of the stack. And if there's another continuation after the front of the stack, that's really perfect. A lot of the times you can have a really open deep cut there, or if another in cut happens, that's really perfect. So again, if the disc is swung over to the dump, over the break side, front of the stack, cuts over to the break side. If there's another continuation of the break side, that's great. That would be the goal. But we want to make sure that that front of the stack is the person cutting to the break side after the handler throws it around to their dump. So those are 3 main options for handlers and the flow of the vert. So the flow of the vert is just in cut or deep cut and then clearing back in the stack. I guess one thing that I can touch on really quick here is if you do end up cutting deep, it can be really weird because you're not really sure, how to get back into the stack. The worst thing you can do is cut straight back into the open side and clogging up that space, because someone else in the back of the stack won't be able to see you behind them. So they're going to make the cut and boom, you have 4 people in the space, like I mentioned earlier with the upline cut. So if you do end up cutting deep and you want to clear back into the stack, you want to do so by going over to the break side. And sometimes the flow of the offense will work out, so when you're clearing back to the break side, a continuation will be happening to the break side and you can be there for that continuation. And oftentimes defenders won't really follow you all the way there. So again, if you cut deep, just make sure you're clearing over the break side and getting back into the front of the stack. So the flow is just in cut or deep cut, and that person may catch it, may not. If they do catch it, then you want to make sure you're shifting the stack downfield, maintaining the 10-yard space between the person with the disc and the front of the stack. That's the main guideline we want to go to, is fit 10 yards. It can be 12, it can be 15, anywhere less than 10. You're clogging up the space a little bit. You're limiting the amount of yards that you can gain on your cuts. So maintaining the front of the stack space between the person with the disc, 10 yards every time. And what we like to call that is just pushing the stack. If you hear someone in the stack say push, 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 that just means you need to go deeper into the stack, push down the field, and maintain that space between the person with the disc and the front of the stack.